It wasn't going from being a, size 22 to a size 6. Like, that wasn't the change. The change was going from, there is so much more that I can do. There is so much more life out there that I can have. I have to be brave enough to go do it.
Hi, I'm Jo Clark, and thanks so much for joining me today. This is the Redefining Midlife podcast, a podcast designed for the 40-plus woman who is determined to challenge society's myths and beliefs around midlife. It's for the woman who is inspired and ready to define midlife her way. Join me each week as I chat to health and wellness experts for up-to-date information on how to live well, as well as some special conversations with incredible everyday women redefining what midlife can look like. Here's to making our next half of life even better than the first. This is an episode about overcoming. Get ready to meet an incredible woman who has risen above many adversities throughout her life. The Barb Mosslar we will meet in this episode is a very different woman to the one from her younger years. Today, Barb happily lives in Brisbane with her husband and 2 young adult sons. She is a writer, traveller, and corporate PR specialist. But life wasn't always so rosy for Barb. She also came from a challenging upbringing, and being a heavier girl, low self-esteem and crippling limiting beliefs shaped her early adult life. Barb vulnerably shares this time in her life and how she navigated through and overcame these challenges. Barb is also the author of The Doable Diet, published in 2006 by Allen and Unwin, which documents her extraordinary weight loss of more than 45 kilograms at the age of 26. Now, I won't give too much more away because Barb will be sharing this story along with many other amazing stories from her life. You can also find the links to Barb in our show notes. So let's begin. A very big welcome to the podcast, Barb. Now, your life so far has been such an interesting one, and I'm very much looking forward to you sharing it with all the podcast listeners today.
Terrific. Thanks, Jo. It's great to be here. My first podcast. I'm really looking forward to getting stuck in.
I love it when it's a maiden podcast for people because that way they're probably more open to talking about things that they haven't shared before.
I know they're probably a bit more nervous too. They might talk a bit faster. And I'm a chronic oversharer, so we'll see how we go.
Oh, let's see what we can find out today then. We've had a pre-chat prior to this, us recording today's, and your life story has been pretty incredible so far. And, you've got so many more years left to live. So it's going to be amazing just how your next half of life is going to look compared to the first half. So we'll just talk about some of the things that happened in the first half. You had lots of ups and downs in your life, and today your life looks very different to your early years. So can you just tell me a little bit about your time growing up?
Absolutely. Well, and I hope I'm only halfway, and it would be nice to make that milestone. I grew up in Ipswich, which for those of you who are from Brisbane will know that's out of the western sort of side of Brisbane. It was a happy but dysfunctional, like many of us growing up in the 70s and 80s. Childhood. I was raised by a single mum for quite a time. I had a few half siblings. Look, it was a ragtag kind of bag, and I left home when I was pretty young, when I was about 16, to go and make my way in the world. But we dealt with there was a lot of fun, a lot of laughter, but there was also we dealt with domestic violence, substance abuse, childhood sexual abuse, and divorce, drama. It was a lot for a kid who was quite shy and introverted to take in, and I was the eldest child of 4 as well. So my mum was often working 2 jobs, so I took on a carer role at a very, very young age, and that's really when I discovered writing during that time. But I also discovered Milo and peanut butter during those years as well.
So in that order, was it writing?
Pretty much. Often all 3 at the same time. Which little did I know that was going to lead to content that would one day, become an important part of my life and career journey. But yeah, look, writing was my escape. I started doing it from as young as I can remember. I had a poem published when I was 11 in the Queensland Times, and it wasn't something that I just thought everyone could do it. So I didn't. It took a very long time for me to realize that it was something that was kind of special for me. I wrote my first book when I was 15 on a typewriter, and the characters were my friends. I was very shy. I was quite lonely, given our home and family sort of situation as well. I was tentative about making friends or having people over or going to stay at other people's homes. So a lot of the if I didn't get a lot of time to myself looking after the household, but when I did, I just disappeared into my little fantasy world. But that also, I guess, contributed to many years of poor eating habits, very little exercise or physical activity. And by the time I was kind of 15, 16, I was reasonably overweight. And I look back now, nowhere near as overweight as I thought I was then. But I hit puberty really early. I got my period of boobs when I was 11. And, so by the time I was kind of 15, I looked very different to the girls at my all-girl Catholic high school. And we know what a breeding ground for self-esteem they are. And I was mercilessly bullied through sort of from the end of grade 8 till I left that school, the end of grade 10. And Thunder Thighs, and I had a nickname for me which even my own family didn't know about until years later, when the story really became public, that they called me Fab. And I didn't even know what that stood for ages. I just knew it wasn't very nice. And it was Fat Ass Barbara. And literally it stuck to the point. My teachers called me that because they just thought it was
they didn't realize.
They didn't realize, no one knew. And so yeah, it's it was pretty traumatic. So then I just avoided going to school, as much as I could as well.
So Barb, were the teachers, given you had that talent in writing, were the teachers trying to encourage you to stay?
I think a bit. I didn't leave school. I changed to a different school, which was a better environment for me. And I had no confidence in math and mathematics. I was good at English, obviously, and history, but I actually changed to a school where maths wasn't compulsory for grade 11 and 12. I'm sure that doesn't exist anymore. And and I left my mother's house. I packed up a bag and I went to stay with my grandmother, who was living in Brisbane. And I changed. I went to a much smaller co-ed school where I spent 2 years there just trying to be anonymous. Like, a good day for me was a day that no one noticed I was there. And I could just live in peace. And with no conflict at home, no conflict at school. And that was sort of the early tendrils of starting to care about myself. I was kind of 16, 17 at that point, and it was the first time I really started to see that there was a life ahead of me. There was a future, instead of just always being in survival mode, just always trying to get through every day, whether that was at home or at school. That was kind of, the beginning, I guess, of a revolution that, is, to be honest, still playing its way, out in my life today.
I bet you wish you could give that younger Barb a big cuddle and just tell her everything's all right. Like, I'm feeling like, I want to embrace her.
Sorry, we do that when I go to therapy. She gets lots of hugs.
Yeah, well, that's good. She deserves it. So, Barb, you also married young. So you married at 20.
Very young.
And what led you to get married and take that big step at such a young age?
Oh God, probably low self-esteem and lack of awareness. No, it was look, I married the first boy who looked at me. I was a sort of shy, overweight, kind of 19-year-old woman. I'd never had a boyfriend. I was literally working at a petrol station not far from where I live now. I wasn't even meant to be rostered on that day, and it was a Sunday. I was bored, and in came this cocky limousine driver who was also bored. And what a match made in heaven. The most romantic, Valentine's Day coming up. What a story. And,
Damn, I don't think this will be released in time.
It's a rom-com right there. So, he was, what was he? He was about 26, I think. And
so you would have thought that was very sophisticated to have an old...
very sophisticated, and like I'm literally living at home, at this point, like with my nana, and I'm going to, travel college at night because I've decided I want to be a travel agent because that sounds really glamorous and exciting. And then I work during the day at a petrol station. And so we just like hung out. Basically, he stayed until the end of my shift, and then he took me out for coffee or whatever it was. And then very quickly, I was like, oh, you need fixing up, you need looking after. I've got I know how this works. And so then I just started, I had this fantasy in my, like, literally, this is the saddest thing to admit in public, but as a kid, I used to cut the pictures out of like the Target and Kmart catalogs. That is so tragic. I told my sons this recently and they were like, don't ever tell anyone that.
Yeah, but that's a teenage boy. Come on. It was Dolly back in, the Dolly magazine. You'd do the same sort of thing. Don't feel so strange.
My fantasy family, like I cut out the pictures of all of the people, and all I wanted, I was baby mad. And so I think I was like, right, all you need is a compliant partner, and then you can get married and have a baby and live happily ever after. And so it was kind of we moved in together. That was my first experience really of completely living independently. And then it's like, oh well, we've lived together, we should get engaged. Oh well, we're engaged, oh let's book a wedding. So the things just happened. And by the time I was 21, we were married, and within 3 months of getting married, I think it was, I was pregnant with my oldest son. And so I just turned 22 when Riley was born. And honestly, like, this single most focusing event of my entire life, and it was everything that I had always dreamed it would be. And my now ex-husband, spoiler alert, he literally could have fallen down a well and it would have taken me 2 years to notice he was missing. I was just in love. I had never been so consumed by anything in my life as I was after the birth of my son. And and it just, during that time too, like, I'd been estranged from my mum and my dad, but I'd been estranged from my mum for a couple of years. We hadn't spoken at all. And I reconnected with her when I was pregnant, and she was actually at my son's birth. She actually, held my hand, and she was there. And so there was many moments in life that she wasn't there, but she was there when her first grandchild came into the world. And given that we lost her a few years later, that's a memory that I'm really grateful for. And I was a lot more forgiving of her once I became a mum, because I saw just how hard it was. And even though it was hard for us, my taxi driving, now car selling husband, we barely made ends meet. Who knows where he was? He was either driving cabs or getting high, or doing both. He just, like, he wasn't around. So I was a single mum pretty much from the get-go, and I appreciated, what my mum must have gone through, particularly as she'd had 4 of us. So we kind of reconnected, and and then again, like, you're ticking the boxes at that age. So now I'm 22 and I've got this child, and I'm like, well, I want a better life for him than I had. I want stability. So I went back to work when he was 5 months old. I was working in a travel company as a documentation manager that don't even exist anymore, back at the old dot matrix printers. I used to print airline tickets. And it's so funny, like the old credit card machine. It doesn't even exist. But I was the youngest. I quickly was the youngest manager in that company, and I think I was like on some incredible salary of about $27,000 a year. And which, let me tell you, back in 1999 was like,
that's pretty good.
This is pretty good. And so look, I fought, kicked, scratched and clawed to get us a house. And, back in the olden days, I don't know if anyone remembers, there was a company that did no deposit, new build houses. I think it was called Divine. Doesn't exist anymore. And I did everything I needed to do to get our ducks in a row. I knew less about money than I did about food, which was saying something. Because at 22, I was still living on peanut butter and Milo. And, so we did. And I think it was on Riley's second birthday that we got the keys to our, cute brand new little house out at Wynnum. And we moved in, and I just thought I was, absolutely like the duck's nuts. I had everything I'd ever dreamed of. I was so respectable. I think I must have been 24 then, and I've got a house and a baby and a husband, and
wow.
Oh my God,
so different to my life at 24. So different. And that's what I love, talking to other women, to hear what their life was like as in their teens, 20s, 30s, 40s. It's just amazing how different it all is. I have
a 24-year-old son now, and his life is very different to how mine was.
Yep. And you've got two boys?
Yeah, so then that was so once we were in the house, I wanted to be at home with the kids, and the only way to do that was to earn an income. So I became a family daycare provider, and family daycare mum, as we used to be called. And then I planned to have I wanted to have a second child, and that one took a bit longer. But then when I turned 26, I had my second son, Hayden. So he'll be 21 this year. And at that point too, I was very much like, our marriage had sort of gone from being friends and housemates to kind of, I'm not even going to say co-parents, co-mortgage payers. And, he very much, he wasn't equipped for the job that I hired him for. I'm not, he's not a bad guy. I just, now in hindsight, obviously I can recognize that we were just two loose particles, floating in the earth looking for somewhere to belong. And so we thought maybe that place was each other. We never had that, having been in love since then, I didn't even know what that looked like. And I wasn't looking for it. I didn't care. I had my kids and, and our home, and that's all I cared, was creating a safe place for them where it was free of conflict, free of drama. They had clean clothes and, and shoes that fit them. So, my expectations of life at that point was still pretty simple. I've got much loftier ambitions these days, but back then, if I could do a decent weekly grocery shop and take my kids to see the Wiggles, I was pretty much winning at life. And I cultivated through that time too a group of girlfriends from my previous job. We all had babies together. It was like a baby boom. And I formed this sort of mothers group out of that. And then we literally are all still friends. I had lunch on the weekend with two of the founding members. Wow. And we've been friends now for 27 years. Brilliant. And they're my sisters, they're my mum, they're my aunts, they're my girl tribe. And our kids have all grown up alongside of each other. And we've all helped each other through. We can't believe now that we're talking about kids moving out and grandkids and menopause and all. We're like, what the hell? We remember trying to figure out what to wear to each other's 21st birthdays, and it's all very strange. But they were really like, I bring them up because they were so important around this time, because I felt like the sun shone out of them, and I was so inspired by their lives and the things that they were doing and the dreams that they had. And it was really like the beginning of a much bigger metamorphosis that was to come, because it was sort of, they opened my eyes to more in life, what's next, and like nothing like huge, but they might have gone on an overseas holiday, or they might have put in a pool, like they might have gone and done some study, or like just little things that made me start to think there might be a bit more to it than this. And also I'd say struggle with self-esteem so much. And, and look, every single, very overweight person that I have worked with or talked with, there's always an underlying reason. It's never because they're lazy. It's never because they're stupid. It's never because of all of the myriad of things that they tell themselves. There's always something that is paining them. for me, it was like I didn't think that I deserved the life that I had. So I didn't deserve to be pretty. I didn't deserve to wear nice clothes.
So for you, Barb, then,
For me,
it was the unhappiness that you've had at that point in time in your life that led you to turning to food as your escape, basically what happened. And then came a fairly large weight increase over a certain amount of time.
absolutely. And you know, and it became a self-fulfilling prophecy. You know, I went from being kind of slightly sort of more filled out or developed than the other girls at 13. Then the bullying started. By the time I left that, and I'm, you know, 15, I'm doubled in size, you know, and then I get married and have a baby. And it was also coupled with like ignorance, right? We didn't have the internet, you know, that like I didn't know anything about other than what I'd learned at home ec about nutrition and eating and, you know, all of that stuff. So I was just making basic things. I just thought food was for snacking or for when I felt bored or when I felt lonely or when I felt, you know, and it's terrifyingly easy to gain that amount of weight. Like you don't have to eat 17, you know, McDonald's burgers a day. It's not like that. It's cutting the crust off your kids' sandwiches and dipping them in the peanut butter jar and then eating them. You know, it's having too big a meal too late at night. It's, you know, drinking juices because you think they're healthy. Like there's all these things that I just
were
didn't
so
know.
dangerous, weren't they? And that was the decades where convenience foods came in and they were all the go. And then the low fat and the low fat substituted with the high sugar. So, you know, there's all that sort of thing that was happening, and all those bloody diets of those the 80s, 90s, and into the 2000s.
Cheap too, you know, that was a big thing. Like we never had $2 to our name. So, you know, like, you know, buying a lot of fresh, you know, I couldn't afford to have things expiring in the fridge. You know, as I say, I was never, you know, still to this day, I'm not a great cook. You know, I'm better than I was. We don't have Milo in the cupboard anymore. You know, but I didn't.
I bet if I looked hard on buns and peanut paste in there.
Oh yeah, no, if it was here. But you know, so it was all of those things. So I had no base knowledge to kind of start with, you know, and but more than that too, I accepted it for myself. You know, I had not, my whole identity became I was fat happy Barb. I had all these friends all of a sudden, more friends I've ever had in my life. But my role in that friendship group is, you know, bring the Tim Tams, bring the cake, encourage you know, which very much gave everybody else permission to, you know, indulge. I never challenged anybody because I was always scared in a conflict. They would just turn around and say, oh yeah, but you're fat. So, you know, I didn't develop opinions on things. I didn't push back on things. You know, I had no boundaries, and you know, and that was my body and my eating habits were just a representation of that. So I think after I kind of reached that age and stage of life where I had the boys, I had all these things, I had these great friends, and I'm like, well, maybe I'm not as shit as I think I am. Like, maybe there's actually something to, like, these people that I think are pretty cool want to hang out with me. Maybe I don't have to look like this forever. Plus, you know, my mum by this point was diagnosed with terminal cancer. I just thought I need to get healthy. Was a really big driver as well. I've got these 2 kids now. Like, God help them if they're left to their father.
So had you know, at this stage where you decided?
No, so we were still together, and so I had H was born, and I just made, you know, I tried every diet, you know, known to me. I tried so desperately to like catch anorexia and bulimia, and then beat myself up because I couldn't stick at either of those things. You know, wasn't I hopeless? I know, ridiculous. You know, I tried, there was a medication back in the day called Xenical. Awful. You know, it works because it makes you so sick that you can't eat. You know, I did the grapefruits, I did the, you know, the apple, the watermelon,
there were endless diets out there that you could have tried.
Endless, you know, and all they ever did was make me feel depressed when I failed, and then I'd gain any weight back. And around the same time too, they launched The Biggest Loser. TV show, and I just like I found that really offensive, and I thought this just reinforces for overweight people that it has to be a torturous nightmare, that you have to run up a mountain with a backpack full of rocks, that you have to, you know, put you in a room with all these like sweets and see if you go crazy. You know, so all of that was kind of germinating in my brain. And I thought, there's got to be another way. Like, it's just got to be simpler than this. And so I literally started, I still have them. I started serving my own dinner when I fed the kids at, you know, 5:30, an Ice Age melamine bowl and plate. And I substituted out my normal dinner plate and bowl for those, and I used them for years. And so I'd make the same food that I was going to make anyway, but I just have it in these. I switched to like small, like teaspoons. Like, again, to this day, if I'm eating anything with a spoon, I still use a teaspoon.
Yeah.
You know, and it was just these little ideas that started to take root. And we booked our first ever family holiday. We were going to go to Cairns, you know, in a year's time, because it was going to take me that long to save up for it. And I thought, I just want to, like, you know, I'm not going to tell anyone I'm on a diet because I don't want to set myself up for disappointment again, but I would really like to be like a size 16 to 18 by the time we go in 12 months, because then I can wear shorts, you know, as hot as hell up there. You know, I want to be able to wear shorts. So that was the goal. And by the time, I think I started that around about, my home was born May, about June, July. And by the time that Christmas rolled around, I'd lost 20 kilos. And I was, I'd already, you know, so well and truly surpassed. But I wasn't really, still not really talking about it. People were starting to kind of ask at that point, like, you look different. Have you lost weight? Have you changed something? And I just had a baby too. So it's kind of hard, you know, people expect you to change. So sort of first 20 kilos was a bit like, the second 20 kilos was like, everyone's like, oh my God, are you okay? Like, what's happening? What are you doing? But I just stayed the course. I didn't make it more extreme. I just kept doing the same thing every day. And consistency became really important to me. And I still got up in the morning and I went for a walk down on the Wynnum foreshore just for 30 minutes, watching my shadow get smaller. I found that really motivating. I was really enjoying watching my shadow shrinking on the path. And then, then starting to see these like shapely legs. I'm like, holy shit, are they mine? And wanting to stop people and point out my cool shadow legs. And and I didn't put pressure on it. I thought, whatever I'm doing, I don't want to break the spell, so I'm not going to mess with it. I'm just going to keep doing the same thing, and it was self-fulfilling again. Like, it started little by little. My mindset started to catch up with what I was doing. I started to feel good. I started to feel confident. By the time we got on that holiday, I had turned 27, and I had lost over 45 kilos. So I was in shorts, but they were cute little size 10 denim cutoffs. And and a little tankini bikini top, which I had not worn anything like that probably since I was 6. So it was I had a completely new body. Like, I used to actually catch, we had a 2-way bathroom in those days. I kept getting bruises on my hips because the way my body moved through the bathroom in a hurry, chasing after wet toddlers, I was not used to. I had to reposition myself, and I kept slamming into it with my hip bones. There was just these strange kind of things to get used to. And I've likened it, so I've sort of told the story before, that it's like when you see Superman or someone gets superhero powers and they're bloody hopeless, and I felt like that was me in my new body. I had no idea how to fly this thing. And just kept flying it into a wall.
Well, you would be an entirely different spatial awareness that you would have to get used to, entirely different for your body.
Which is the way people are looking you in the eye.
So, but with that, so the weight gain and then the subsequent weight loss was the silver lining for you. It helped you discover then your voice, your confidence, and it also landed you a book deal. Now, that wasn't a straightforward process because, nothing for you, Barb, is straightforward, as I'm learning. And it also involved you taking some big risks. So I'd love for you to share your story of how you were able to use your experience and write a book about it.
Yeah, for sure. So when I lost the weight, you know, everybody was starting asking, what are you doing? And I started getting people, it was the kind of early days of email and texting. And I was starting to hear from like relatives of friends or neighbors that I'd never even met before asking me, you know, what am I doing? So I've started like writing little bits of it down and just sharing it out to people and, you know, thinking, how could I tell this, you know, more broadly? We didn't have social media back then. You know, the internet, you still had to plug in your phone. So it was actually my GP who'd been monitoring me through the weight loss, kind of blood tests and making sure I was, you know, doing it safely. He actually said to me, you know, you should really write a book about all this. And I remember getting back in the car and just thinking, well, maybe I should. And it was the first moment that I kind of thought, I reckon I could do that. You know, based on nothing, you know, at this point, I haven't had any further education. You know, I graduated high school and I'm at home running a family daycare business and I haven't cracked out the typewriter in a million years. But, you know, I've got these like printed folio of dreadful teenage fiction to go on. So, you know, I was like, I'm going to have a go. And so anyway, I came home, sorted the kids out, put them to bed, plugged my phone into the internet, went out to the garage where our computer was, jumped onto my, you know, dial up and then emailed, I think it was New Idea magazine and one of the others had a little tell us your story thing. So I was like, you know, hi, Brisbane mum, lost this weight, blah, blah, did it by myself, if you're interested. Anyway, within 24 hours, New Idea had called, booked me in. It was all terribly exciting. They came out, did a photo shoot. I'd never done a photo shoot, got to be in like one leg of my jeans. And now all of a sudden I'm like, you know, I'm literally one of those people who tells their story in New Idea magazine. You know, and I remember when it came out, I went and bought like 10 copies and everyone was very excited. But there was the journalist that came out to actually do the interview. I was talking to her and I said, look, you know, this is all like really fun and cool, but I'm doing this because I'd actually really like to write a book about it. And I didn't know how to go about doing that or how to, you know, talk to a publisher or, you know, and she took away some of my fiction work from many years earlier. And we just connected. We had a good vibe, we had a good chat. And off she went. And I, you know, didn't really think too much more about it at that time. Then I was picking my son up from kindy and she called me on the mobile and I'm wrangling multiple children in and out of my big Kia Carnival. And she said, I think I've got someone who might be interested. And I'm like, what? And she said, they're looking to do this kind of a book at the moment. You know, can I pass on your details? Well, hell yes. So I got a random email from someone I didn't know who I was writing for a couple of months. About 2 months that we went back and forward. I was dealing with what I thought was a consultant or an agent, and he would just send me writing assignments. And then I still have them printed. He sent me an email saying, okay, you've convinced me now you can write. Now convince me that this is more than an extended magazine article and it can, you know, you can make it a book. So then I came up with the chapters and the outline and the story. And then waited and waited for what felt like eternity. And I got a call up, you know, again, juggling the kids to say, oh, if I was free next Tuesday, could I possibly meet with a publicist at the cafe of the Stanford Hotel in the city? And I was like, you know, in the movies where people like move the phone and then do this one, you know, and I'm like, I think I can make that happen. And you know, as I'm like drawing in red around that date on the calendar on the wall. And you know, so when I got there and I went in, I'd never been inside the Stanford Plaza Hotel in my entire life at that point, and or anything even like it. You know, it had marble floors and chandelier. It was so not my comfort zone. And I just remember sitting in the foyer. I got there nice and early, just thinking, don't throw up, don't throw up, don't throw up. I was that nervous. And then out came this lady who was about 35, you know, a little bit overweight, had a 2-year-old daughter. I was like, I got this. It's my audience. And we sat out the back and watched the river and drank coffee and talked for about 3 hours. And walking back to the car, I thought, I reckon this is going to happen. And you know, and then we waited and my whole family came over. My mum was still alive at that point. But it was like, you know, winning the lottery. Like we were sitting around in my little house at Wynnum and refreshing my email. I'd moved the computer by that point from the garage into the dining room table. refreshing the email 14,000 times an hour because, you know, we didn't know, it wasn't all on your phone back then. And then it came through and it said, we will be pleased to offer you a contract to write, you know, what became the Doable Diet. And honestly, I just started sobbing with relief. It's still what I do now when I finish writing something.
Yes.
It's part of my process. But, you know, that was such a special moment, and to get to share that with, you know, my mom and my nan and, you know, my kids, and yeah, it was really cool. So that was kind of the fairy tale part. The rest of it was just hard work. You know, then I still kept my my family daycare job. I worked from 6 a.m. in the morning until, you know, the last kids left at 5:30 in the afternoon, and then I sorted my kids out, got them to bed. Thankfully they went to bed early, and then I wrote every night for 3 months, often until, you know, 2 o'clock in the morning, until I had to get up and feed one anyway. I delivered the manuscript 6 weeks ahead of deadline, and it was posted back then in hard copy. I still know the post box that I put it in. I see it the odd time I'm down that way anymore, and it was very cheesy, but I kissed it like they do in the movies for good luck, and I popped it in the mailbox. And funnily enough, then I headed back up to Cairns again for a holiday, this time in a full-on bikini. By that stage too, like, I knew my marriage was done. So it was like, you know, mum was very sick at that point. Like, I just knew. I actually called the publisher because it was edited for about a year. There's a whole production process, takes about a year. And I remember calling them and just saying, can we just take the word husband out of the acknowledgements? Like, I'm happy to leave the acknowledgement, but I don't want to have the word husband in there. And she was like, okay. You know, and it was just very much like the weight had been this like absolute millstone around my neck. Like, it had so many of beliefs that I had about myself that turned out to be so wrong. That was the big thing for me. It wasn't going from being a, you know, size 22 to a size 6. Like, that wasn't the change. The change was going from, there is so much more that I can do. There is so much more life out there that I can have. You know, I have to be brave enough to go do it. And it doesn't matter how good you're feeling about yourself or how great you look in a denim skirt at this point, you know, leaving your husband, your children's father of 10 years, and as I say, there was no bad blood between us. It was scary. You know, this house that I had literally worked my ass off to have, and had, you know, detailed and decorated to within an inch of its life, you know, now had to be sold. I had to give up all this security that I've spent the last 10 years building. You know, it's like I built myself this place that I thought that's where my happiness lived, and then I had it and my happiness wasn't there. So it was like, oh, okay, well, the search continues. You know, and also I wanted intimacy. You know, by this point I'm, you know, whatever I am, 27, 28. And
you're in your prime.
Yeah, the world's very different.
Yeah.
Well, I never had male attention. You know, I had no idea. Like, all of a sudden, you know,
weren't invisible anymore either, because the invisibility been taken away, because so many people who have got extra weight on feel as though they're invisible. Yeah, society.
And they try to make themselves invisible. You know, I was very much like, I conditioned myself for years not to look at my own reflection in the window of the car, or it literally changed where I parked at the shopping centre, because I didn't want to park down what I called the skinny people shops, because I didn't want to have to walk past all of those to get to, you know, so I parked right up, you know, near the grocery end, and all the, you know, I was like 22 years old, you know, shopping at Miller's. I'm not having got Miller's, but it's like mentally, I was hiding. I was beneath all that fat. I was hiding from life. I was hiding from myself. I was hiding from change.
So it's a big self-discovery time for you then, your late 20s and then into your 30s. They were the big learning years for you, obviously. So you had a book that went very well. So it did really well, your book. So you're on the high of that. And then but there's some big moments. You actually, and tell the story about what you decided to do as far as your study goes then. That's a really interesting story too.
So 2006 is the timeline of all of that. So sell the house in February, you know, move out, go our separate ways. I take the kids and move into a lovely modern townhouse in the centre of bustling, you know, Bulimba, which for me at the time felt like I'd moved to Bohemian Paris. Like, it was literally like, like night and day from where I'm from. And I'm like, I think I am so freaking bougie right now. And, and I'm walking the kids down on their scooters and prams for little baby chinos and the leafy streets. And, I'm living the dream. Because at this point too, I think that everyone who sells a book becomes J.K. Rowling. That reality check was soon to come. So leave husband, sell house, move. I turned 29. I think 2 weeks later, my book actually it arrives. It's out there in the world. I start the publicity tour. 2 weeks after that, my mum loses her battle with pancreatic cancer. I'm in the room with her. Again, I'm the eldest. I'm trying to look after my siblings, as we go through like all of that. And no matter what age you are and no matter what the relationship's been, I think particularly for a woman, losing your mum is such a, like, I'm still figuring it out 18 years later, but at least she got to see the book. She got to hold it. Actually, I have to tell this side note story. When I called her up to tell her I was leaving my first husband, I was being really like tentative about it and trying to justify it. And she just said to me, "Thank God I lived long enough to see that." Which I like. And I just laughed. I was like, I was like, "Oh, I made you proud." But yeah, so that was a side note. So yeah, so now I'm a single mum. I've lost my mum. I've thrown caution to the wind. I'm rapidly spending up all the money I made on my house sale. I'm out there promoting the book. I got flown to Sydney to go on the Today Show. I did multiple radio interviews. I went to everything that I could basically do to keep, to get the book out there. Started online dating, which is I could write a whole other book about that, because I wanted to go and explore this, minefield as it turned out to be. And I went and had the loose skin removed at the end of that year as well, to kind of complete. I had 500 grams of skin removed in an 8-hour operation. And I came home with 4 drain bags in for a month, and I had to wear like a bodysuit. It was still to this day probably the scariest thing I've ever done. So that all happened within a space of 12 months. And I just thought, like, I'm about to turn 30. Like, I can't just be like a one book wonder. I've changed everything. There has to be like, what's next? And, and I just was like, I'm going to go back to uni. And so I literally just, walked up with the kids to the news agency on the corner, bought the QTAC admission guide, because that's how you applied back in those days, filled out my little form as a mature age student and put in to do a degree in journalism and communication, to which I was, got an early offer for. And so then, in 2007, I started as the oldest undergraduate journalism student of the year at UQ. But because I looked very cute in my little skirt, my Havaianas and my big hair and big sunglasses, no one could tell. And and like, it was the smartest thing I've ever done. It was one of the best moments of my life. The first day I walked into campus, forgetting that I went to the wrong room and sat through half a statistics lecture. I figured out that you had to check the boards at the last minute. But look, that was the beginning of the next phase, and it was hard. Like, say, I was a single parent. I started cleaning houses for friends for cash. I struggled to find a place that I couldn't stay living in my bougie townhouse. That was not a long-term sustainable solution. I lived for a month underneath one of my friend's houses in kind of a spare converted garage she had, with my kids sleeping with me on the queen size mattress on the floor, making $2 packet pasta on the little camp stove thing that she had. And I was like, I need to make some money. So I just sent out a text to everyone of my friends and said, I'll clean $20 an hour. So I went from 1 minute, I'm on the Today Show, or I'm, off doing like book launches in store and doing all these things, to, this like absolute humbling, experience. But I got my son got accepted into a brilliant C&K kindy, and I wasn't going to pass that up. So I just had to, I had to get by. So, so I lived on a lot of Vegemite sandwiches. So it's much easier to keep the weight off when you're poor. But I did treat myself years later. That anyone who's familiar with the University of Queensland campus at St Lucia knows there's a Merlot cafe, and my big treat was to allow myself a small coffee when I was on campus. And they had these paninis, like $8, and these chocolate smooch biscuits that I just used to look at lovingly, and I thought, one day I'm going to have that. And then I did. And then finally, 6 years later, when I finally graduated, I specifically went back there to go to that cafe, and I had myself a big slap.
Love it.
Slap up meal. But so it really did, like that, the power of education. I'm a huge proponent, educating myself on food, nutrition, self-esteem, body awareness, body image helped me to change my life physically. And then using that curiosity, that wanting to try new things, not shying away from something because it's hard or you don't understand. Within 2 years of starting uni, I was offered a job in the Queensland government. They basically gave me a 4-week paid work experience gig. But the lady knew about my book, so she was really keen to meet me anyway around the book. So at the interview, that's all we talked about. I ended up staying in Queensland Health for 3 years and was given some really big high-level opportunities, which have set me up for the career that I've had since then. But I kept studying, and then eventually in 2013, because I had to drop my study back to part-time while I was working full-time, and I had 2 kids at school by this point. But when I graduated, my kids were in the audience. And then not this year now, last year, 2023, I sat in the same room in the audience when my eldest son crossed the same stage and got his degree. And there was
for you. Yeah.
Wasn't a dry eye in the house.
I bet. Yeah.
Because the kids ran around, they played in the great court, they sat in the library with me while I studied. I didn't have the internet for the first 2 years that I was at uni at home, so I couldn't afford it. And I didn't have a computer, so I used to drop Riley off at school, and then I'd take Hayden with me down to the shopping centre where they had, I don't know if they still have them, the $2 kiosks that you could use the internet. So we would just literally sit at Kmart at Cannon Hill and H would eat a box of Tiny Teddies and play with a couple of dinosaurs while I smashed out an assignment.
And so now you've been able to use your degree that gave you the great jobs afterwards, and now you've been in corporate for how many years now in that world?
Yes. So now I'm a corporate spin doctor. No, I've been writing professionally now for about 15 years, I think. And now I'm the old guard. I've gone from being one of the newbies that now are mentors, so the kids as they're coming through. So yes, I'm a communications manager for a very large Queensland financial services company, an insurer, and I work directly for one of their executive leadership team members. Like the things that I've used in my job have been all of the things that helped me the whole way through. To this day, I don't know a lot of technical information about the financial services industry, but I understand people. Like I understand, I'm responsible for internal communications and engagement. And it's, I understand how to help people connect to messages, how to make them care about something. And I advocate all the time for our people when we're messaging. I've been fortunate to have leaders that have recognized the value in those skills, and I've been impressing upon, like my eldest son was now a qualified accountant, but he's actually going back next week to start his civil engineering degree as well. But all through his professional, I keep saying to him, is like the soft skills that you refer to in your environment, like they're so important.
Yeah.
You can't
those, can you? And they're not the things that AI picks up and all of these other things that sound great.
You can't watch them on a podcast. No. You've got to listen to you have to learn them through experience. You have to learn them by being vulnerable, by feeling, to say, humbled, by feeling like broken sometimes, but then picking yourself back up and going again and having an absolute unshakable belief that you are worthy of this success. You are worthy of doing this, of trying this, of having this experience. You're lucky though, Barb,
aren't you, really, that you've been able to pick up that skill, having that emotional intelligence and growing that part of you over the years. So many people aren't lucky enough to get that or have the opportunities to perhaps find what you've found. So it's
I
so,
think
I just
so.
love sharing your story, because it might just mean that one person can hear something that you've said, and it can be the spark that sets them off and on their journey as well.
Oh, I definitely hope so. And look, luck is part of it, but I'm very much a believer in just take one step.
Oh, and that's what
Like,
it is. It's like,
you know, just take one step. Just pick up one book. I mean, these days there's so much information at our fingertips. You know, you can listening to your podcast. You know, there are so many people out there. Like, I found such a great network in the Instagram community as well, that helps and inspires me, because I think, as you mentioned, like, it's now my book is 18 years old this year, but my weight loss, or my body, since it's born again state, is now 20 years old.
Yes.
You know, I've been maintaining it with sort of normal fluctuation, but I've maintained the same attitude to my body, to my lifestyle, to my health, to my fitness, and my practices are still consistent 20 years on. And there's very few, diets out there that can say that, that they will work consistently. I've maintained it through studying, through being, scared as a
It's been very
young single
intentional
mum.
that way through too.
Yeah.
You've got that bigger goal in mind, that this is how you want to live. That's your North Star, helping you to where you want to go, and you deviate off that path, which is going to bring me to my next question then, Barb. In 2018, you met your husband. So you obviously have very different priorities for this relationship than you had in your first marriage. So what has that brought to you, having met your husband now, and being an older, like he's older than you, so his family is older as well?
Absolutely. So I swiped right on Pete in 2018. By that stage, I had been kind of single, because, there was obviously relationships in between, but I've been single for about 5 years. We'll call it single-ish.
Yeah.
And by the time I met Pete, but I was in a great place. Like, I had just gone and done my own version of the Eat, Pray, Love trip. I went, on my own for 3 weeks and caught buses around Eastern Europe and went to places that had always been on my bucket list, and I had this amazing, because I love traveling, and I've really prioritized that over the last sort of 15 years or so. When I get $2, I go somewhere. So yes, by the time I met Pete, I was kind of in this zone where it was very, like, I wasn't taking dating very seriously. And he said it, like, we met up on a Tuesday night at a bar at South Bank, and I deliberately by that point made them on like weeknights, low effort, didn't get my don't overinvest, just turn up. But he looked really cute in the photos, and I was like, oh, I don't know, I like that face. I reckon I could wake up to that face. So I'll go along. And and then I get there, and we just like by that stage of life too, values were really important to me. Like, I knew what I valued a lot, and kindness was very much, along with a nice face, kindness was really important to me. But I'm like, I've got a career, I've got money, my kids are sort of older teenagers or young adults now. I don't want young kids again. I don't want anyone who's going to slow me down at this point. And but it would be nice, theoretically, to have someone to share these things with. And so we met up, and he said, oh, this was a great first date. And I was like, oh, no, this isn't a date. No, this is the preliminary interview to see if you qualify for a date. And he asked me the question that everybody asks you on an online date. And I'm sorry, I'm going to swear a little bit here, but he said to me the first night we met, so, what are you looking for out of this? And I said, look, to be really honest with you, at this point of life, I'm looking for a fuck yes or a fuck off. And so I'm like, I'm not saying that
love it.
I'm not saying it's got to be you, but I'm just saying, like, that's really where I'm at. Like, if you're dithering around, or you don't know what you want, or you're still half in love with your ex-wife, or you're, whatever, like just go away. Like, just get them away. And don't slow me down. And so the reason I tell that part of the story is that flash forward to when we got married at home on our beautiful deck overlooking Brisbane City in 2021. The ceremony was done by one of my best friends I met. She worked with me at the service station when I met my first husband.
Oh,
she was my ex-signer. We're godmothers of each other's children. And she had just become qualified as a celebrant, so we were her guinea pigs. So hopefully I'm actually legally married, because she's a bit scatty when it comes to paperwork. Either way. But yeah, when she asked, and I did the, do you paid, blah, blah, blah. And in front of all of our closest friends and family who all knew that story, Pete looked me in the eye and he said, fuck yes.
Touché, well done.
and everybody like uproariously clapped and laughed and cried and carried on. It was a beautiful moment. And I think that describes, Pete and I have been together now since our 6th year together. We've been, even with the pandemic in the middle, we've been overseas 4 times and around Australia, in various places. We've moved house twice. We've bought and renovated our lovely Red Hill cottage, where my boys still live with us. And and we both have, like, Pete was married for 25 years prior to being on Tinder. And what I really respected about him, which is the same thing I respect about everybody, is he had the courage of his convictions. So even though he could have said, I've been married for 25 years miserably for a variety of different reasons, I could just wait it out now. It's not that long till death. I'll just live down the other end of my house and watch my football and drink my beer and which is what I see so many people choosing less than they could be. So the fact that, he went, oh, you know what, like, yeah, I'm in my, late 50s at this point, like, but I want more than this. There's got to be, I'd rather be on my own and open to the possibility. So he was living in a funky little apartment in the city. He was going to the gym. He was riding those little Neuron scooters around town. The man had a spring in his step, and he was desperately keen to travel. So after we've been dating 4 months, I said to him, okay, let's go to France together, because that's how we'll know if we get along. If this thing's got legs, if we don't kill each other driving on the wrong side of the road.
Absolutely. We learned that early on.
I'm like, I'm going to really test out this fuck yes theory here. Like, if you're up for all the things I want to do, then this might actually, be a goer. And we had a mighty time. And then when we were going to get engaged, I put the theory to the test again and took him and my 2 kids, and we drove around California for 3 weeks together. And I thought, if we're going to be married and live together, going to see how this goes. And and look, my boys, like, they don't have anything much, it's their choice now to do with their dad. That will be for them to work out. But they love Pete, and the most I ever hoped for was that they would respect that I had someone in my life that I loved and cared about, and that they would treat him, with that respect. When they introduced us now as their parents to their friends, like, I honestly want to cry with happiness. That my boys have, they've grown up with me being like the worst example of how to conduct yourself in romantic relationships, and to the point that it might have actually put them off a bit. Maybe that's why they're both single. But what I love now is that we always joke that I always do everything like last second on a deadline, and I feel like I just did that with this. Like, just as they're about to leave home, finally actually am role modeling for them, like, what a healthy, safe, happy relationship looks like. And then not only has it reaffirmed my faith that exists, but it has for them as well. And I'm just so grateful for that.
They must be very happy that their mum is in a good place as well. I mean, that would mean a lot to them.
Oh, absolutely. Look, we're super close. I guess we wouldn't all be living together in a tiny little cottage. My son's a 6'8" and 6'4".
Oh, I saw one walk past in the last time we spoke. Yeah, there's a giant walking past you. Yeah,
they are giants. Yeah, and look, Pete is the most chilled out, person who ever lived, and I think he actually somehow is the biological father of my youngest son, because their temperament is so similar. Whereas Riley and I are the 2 Labradors in the household, and then we have an actual Labrador too, so he all gets very high energy and high anxiety.
A lot happening in a very small space. Now, you're coming up to your 47th birthday. You've also thinking about, you've got a, you know, you're not a one-trick pony by any stretch. So you're thinking about a second book.
I'm writing it. I am in the trenches. Yes.
Okay. And what's the focus for that particular book?
So this is it's kind of the follow-on to the story. So the working title, the first book's The Doable Diet. This one's called Doable Dreams. It's very much about how life changed in the 18 years. You know, that story's come of age this year. And I've been wanting for ages to pick up the story and tell the part that I think is the most meaningful, but not really knowing. I didn't know where it ended. You know, I didn't have the full. I've been busy living it. Whereas now I'm in a stage of life where my boys are, you know, they live at home, but they're pretty much grown up, you know, and I do have, as I say, a busy career, but I've been at it a while. So I've got a bit of emotional, you know, and mental bandwidth. And looking now at that next, like what comes next, you know, it's terrifying to be coming up to the age that I am and looking out at the expanse and going, I've ticked off every goal I ever set myself, and I'm very goal focused. What the hell do I do now? You know, and so I started having that kind of last year, that thought of what's next. Like everything I've done has been driven by necessity up until this point, and now I just get to choose. And the freedom of that is actually overwhelming.
Delicious. It is almost.
It is.
And if
it is overwhelming though.
Yeah, if you've got the courage to be able to, and not everyone does, and I acknowledge that.
Yeah.
But if you do, I think it's our responsibility to bloody seize it. It really is.
That's what I'm, you know, that's how this book came out, because I was kind of going like blowing in a paper bag, going like, I don't know what to do next. And I've always known what comes next, and trying to, like, if I didn't have to, you know, have this job to make this amount of money, to pay for the school fees, to do this, to do that, what would I just do if it was just me? And so I'm on the other side of that sort of now. I had my panic attack, and my midlife crisis is I convinced Pete last year to buy a boat, and which I can't drive, but so we had a combined. We bought this boat. And it was well, it was just, you know, the being out on the water and doing that, and that really started to get me out of my own head and give me that time to start thinking about like what gets me excited about the next stage of life. What am I looking forward to? And I was like, I want to go back to writing my own stuff. And so I started writing like essays. Like I wrote about my mum, I wrote about my, you know, one of my stepfathers, you know, I wrote about being bullied at school. Like I just started last year just writing what basically turned out to be essays. And then from that, I thought, you know, I actually think that I could possibly help people with this as well. You know, like I grew up, as I say, a poor kid in housing commission in Ipswich. Like I have a life that by all measures I should not have. You know, and yes, it was hard, and yes, there was some good fortune, but mostly it's just been about trying. Like I've just keep trying. I just got, you know, someone said to me years ago, I think they were being snide, but I took it as a compliment. And they were like, your tombstone's going to say, here lies Barb, she tried. And I'm like, yes, I will take it.
Yeah. You're willing to take risks, Barb, and that's the big difference, I think, between some people. Some of us take risks and some of us don't. I'm in your camp. I like to take risks as well, because you don't know unless you try. And once
you try and you succeed, that's when I felt like it becomes addictive.
It does. Put that genie back in the bottle. Succeed. You learn something else comes out of it. You learn something, and it can open up another door or another direction. So yeah, it doesn't always have to be a big win that you get from something that you try. But yeah, I think
it could be recording your first podcast.
Yes, look at you go.
You know, it could be listening to your first podcast. You know, like there is just it's just that learning to think about something beyond your day to day.
Yes.
You know, like just, you know, going for a walk. And I know people roll their eyes because these things sound so simple, but when you actually do those simple things, they add up to meaningful change, because it'll be on that simple walk that I promise you, you will have an urge you've never felt before to book a flight to Vietnam. Yeah. Like, you know, to enroll in that.
Giving yourself that time and space, isn't it? Because, you know, going for that walk is giving you that time and space. And this is what you're talking about right now, is the sort of thing that I do with women. And it is lights me up to just to see something flick on for a woman to go, I could actually do that. Well, yes, you could, you know, and having someone, it is, and it's having someone voice it. First of all, that's really big for some women to be able to voice something that they want to do. But the other part is to have somebody else believe in them that they actually could.
Absolutely. And it's belief. You know, I was talking to my son the other day about confidence, and he was saying, oh no, but you can't have confidence until you've proven yourself that you can do something. And I'm like, no, that you have belief, which gives you that confidence. Absolutely. So you believe in yourself that you will find how to do that. You will build the skill, but you've got to start with the belief that A, you're worthy, you know, and B, you can do it. You know, and they're lifelong lessons. As I say, I haven't got it all. You know, I have my days, you know, I have my moments. No one's got their shit together. You know, I'm still trying to figure out what I'm going to be when I grow up. You know, but like right now, I am so passionately excited about, you know, opening myself up again, sharing the next stage. You know, there's like, we didn't touch on it today because I'm going to save some content for the book, but you know, in amongst all of that, you know, I lived through another relationship that went for 7 years that, you know, he left me for the secretary. And there's a whole, you know, I'm actually looking forward to writing that chapter.
Be quite cathartic for you.
You know, it's you know, but that was just another time that I had to fight for myself. You know, that I had to like put my big girl pants on, and actually say, you know what, like, yeah, this sucks right now, but it's gonna get better if I just keep trying. And it's gotten so, you know, I think my bio on my Insta is girl of my dreams. You know, because I am, like, I genuinely grew up, all of that stuff that I was, you know, I think these days the kids probably call it manifesting, but, you know, back when I was this like sad, shy, you know, fat kid in my bedroom with 17 spoonfuls of Milo and 2 inches of milk, cutting pictures out of Target catalogs to put in my scrapbook, you know, like I've grown into that person that I you know, I didn't know how the hell I was going to get there, you know, but I did it.
One foot after the other, and you've proven that
exactly,
isn't it? With
you
what
know,
you've done. Yeah.
So look, whether I don't know what the plan is. The next book is just to finish writing it. That's my goal this year, is to get the manuscript finished. You know, look, the universe will take care of it. Like whatever is meant to happen. I can't wait to read it. It's going to be a rip roaring read. I hope so.
It will be, Barb.
But yeah, look, you know, thank you. It's been even just through opportunities like this, through us meeting, you know, and as I say, I found what I'm kind of, you know, in my mind calling like the Empowered Women Network. You know, both in Australia and out. Like I've had great like it's just we really have such a power to lift each other up, and I know that we hear that, you know, and it's very easy to kind of, you know, roll your eyes or think that's a buzzword, but I've seen throughout my whole, you know, I was raised by a single mom in a family of women. You know, my nana had 4 daughters. You know, I've had my same female tribe for most of my adult life. We really do have so much power within ourselves that we can share with others.
Absolutely. And the
you know, to kind of help inspire that.
The ripple effect should never be underestimated of what we can do. And
what
one simple act could do for one person, and what that will then mean for them and everybody who is in their world. So yeah, it's something definitely not to dismiss or downplay at all.
Absolutely. You know, especially ordinary people do extraordinary things.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, Barb, what are you looking forward to in the future? Travel?
Yes, more travel. There's always travel, and so yes, we have a little week away in April, May to celebrate our 3rd running anniversary, which is exciting. Lovely. And we did do the big Europe delayed honeymoon last year. We spent a month in Italy and Greece, which was fabulous. And we've just come back from taking the boys to the US for Christmas, and one of my stepson lives in LA. He's absolutely crushing it as an architect and furniture designer, and so it was lovely to kind of see and be part of his progress. I have 2 step grandbabies that I'm looking forward to seeing again in a couple of months' time. They live in Canberra, but you know, there's takes me right back. It's like yesterday when I'm there playing, you know, Matchbox cars and dinosaurs with these 2 beautiful little boys. but yeah, and then Pete and I are doing a trip at the end of the year. My first time in Asia. So I've traveled a lot in Europe and the US, but I haven't actually done a bit closer to home. So I'm really excited about explore. So if anyone's got Asia tips, I'm open. But yeah, and then just finishing the work, finishing the book, and just again trying to keep healthy. I bought a Pilates reformer a few months ago, so I got a goal this year to try and use it a bit more often, not just to hang clothes on. Yeah, the boys are using it as a footrest when they're downstairs watching their TV. I'm like, no, if you do that, it really makes it look like I'm not using it.
Get those feet off.
Very much trying to enjoy everything I've worked for. That's my big lesson for, and goal for this year is trying to take a breath now and actually try to enjoy it.
Yeah. Well, I wish you all the best in that. And I look forward to seeing things online, because people can find you also, Barb, and links to your books in the show notes. So on Instagram, absolutely, you can be found there. So the links to there. And thank you so much for coming on. It's been an absolute pleasure chatting with you today. And before we leave, what do you hope 80-year-old Barb is going to say about current day Barb?
What a fox.
She was still being all of the candy or denim cut-off shorts, weren't she?
What a fox, and stop plucking those eyebrows.
Oh, that's
look, thank you so much. This has been an absolute pleasure, and I'm kind of sad because I'm enjoying our fortnightly chats.
Yeah, I'm gritting my mouth bloody sore from smiling, Barb. For God's sake, yes.
I think we'll have to have another one in the future.
I think we will. When your book comes out, yes, or when you.
Absolutely. Yes, I will keep. Look, I don't have a copy without sharing it on Instagram, so I'm sure you'll know if I get a book deal.
All right. Thanks so much, Barb.
That was great. Thanks so much. I'll talk to you soon.
Okay.
Thanks so much for listening and sharing your time with me today. I'd love you to hit subscribe on Apple Podcast or your favourite podcast app to keep spreading these empowering messages. Please share this podcast with other incredible midlife women in your world. Join me again next week for another redefining midlife conversation. Thanks again for tuning in.